working here for years, and I still can't believe that Alchemax just flat out ripped off the Avengers logo.
Hey guys, Silent here. We just completed Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions on stream, so we're going to give that a quick review before we move on to the next game. Now, starting off, I was raised on the Spider-Man cartoon back in the 90s, so I'm coming at this with a little bit of nostalgia. But storyline kind of really feels reminiscent of what I experienced back then. In the 90s cartoon, there was a story arc where they had Madam Web with lots of Spider-Men coming together, and this kind of feels like a throwback to that. So that really kind of scores a couple of points from me. Now, I have to admit that I'm not so up on all of the Spider-Man iterations. As much as I'm a comic book geek, I don't kind of follow everything. It's impossible to follow everything. I have read Spider-Man 2099, so I'm slightly familiar with that character, but Spider-Man Noir, that was completely new to me. And, you know, it was nice seeing all of the different Spider-Men, kind of all of the distinct personalities, each having different voice actor, which kind of made it nice. Not just that, you know, 99 had a different voice actor, because he's not Peter Parker, he's Miguel someone, because it's set in the year 2099, obviously. But it's just, you know, nice to see that they all had distinct voice actors, different personalities, with Neil Patrick Harris voicing one Spider-Man, and the guy who did Spider-Man from the 90s cartoon did another, which is kind of awesome to me. Again, nostalgia kicking me in the face. So I was kind of really quite excited about that. One thing, the storyline, as I say, was kind of really did hit me in the nostalgia balls, but one thing that kind of wasn't so clear is if we had one Spider-Man who was using all of these different bodies, if they were like sharing communal, or if they were distinct entities. Because during the beginning, we've got, when we first take over the role of Ultimate Spider-Man, which is Spider-Man in the symbiote suit, you've got Spider-Man kind of freaking out because he's in the suit again. But if we're just seeing like each of the different dimensional Spider-Men, he wouldn't have freaked out. He'd just be like, hey, this is who I am. But no, he's like, oh my god, get the suit off me, and Madam Web has to reassure him. So is it the Amazing Spider-Man in that body? But then all of the other Spider-Men are distinct Spider-Men. They just kind of roll with it, so that doesn't make a great deal of sense. But we'll pass over that, because that's just a momentary stumbling. Gameplay was great, for the most part. The web swinging, the slinging, and the jumping around, that felt really quite natural. I was playing with a Windows controller, so essentially a Xbox 360 controller. And that actually felt really natural, and just kind of worked with the controller. It was right trigger button to web swing, and then you had like perch points that you could shoot a web out and just hoist your way there directly. That worked really well. Sometimes the targeting or the button reaction wasn't great, so you'd swing when you meant to zipline, but you know, that can be forgiven. The combat was a lot of combos which honestly I didn't use. There were so many combos, and combos I hadn't even unlocked yet, and it was just like, okay, well, I'm not even going there. That's needless. And you know, from a gameplay perspective, you understand that you want things to unlock, and that makes sense. But then all of these Spider-Men should have their combat down by this point, so it doesn't really make sense. It's not like you're taking each one just after he's got his powers and he has to learn how to be Spider-Man. So it doesn't... That kind of just irritates me from a gamer, geek perspective. By the point we get to control these Spider-Men, they should have had, you know, full control over their combat. They should know how to sling and swing and jump and everything, so... You know, granted, we as gamers need to learn that, but as characters, they shouldn't really need to learn. Now, one aspect of the gameplay did irritate me, and that is just the fighting. Not like the combat that you get in general, but there's one aspect in boss fighting where you've got the boss gets close, he grabs you, and essentially you've got a to punch your way out of this. And that just really irritated me. I don't know, I just felt like that was shoehorned in. And that just kind of bugs the shit out of me, if I'm honest. It's like, oh no, this is a completely staged event just so I can use this one gameplay mechanic which they shoehorned in. And yeah, I didn't need that at all. Sorry, drinking my coffee there. What I would have liked to have seen in the game is smarter AI. The AI, because there's a couple of scenes where I would literally just like grab a bad guy in front of another bad guy and they don't notice. They're just like, oh no, oh man, I thought I was talking to someone. Apparently I'm talking to myself. I'm just a stupid mob guy here. So, yeah, I literally just grabbed someone in front of you. Be smarter. The entire progression of bad guys is literally just we progress you from Mook to slightly stronger Mook to slightly stronger than that Mook to a Mook who you can't hit face on and you've got to get behind him, so you've got to use a specific tactic. But then you can just use that same tactic on that Mook in front of his identical Mook friends like 5 times, and none of them get wise to it. I would have liked to have seen, of course, varying degrees of toughness, but I would like to have seen them realize if I'm going for a specific style of attack, that they have to counter that. So if I'm swinging behind them, they try to cover each other's rears, or they spin round, or they kind of clump together in a circle so that I can't get the same tactic working repeatedly, because you can just spam that same attack and it works, which is slightly annoying, but there's not much we can do about that. And I would have liked to have seen more separation of each Spider-Man styles. They've all got a little bit of difference. Spider-Man Noir is more stealth-based, which is just kind of enforced because the Mooks all carry guns, apart from when you're surrounded and you have to pull your way out. And it would just been really nice if there was an emphasis on the stealth, but you could still have taken guys out by the 1 and 2s, but no, they've got guns, so as soon as they see you, hey, Spider-Man over here, bang, 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 and then you're dead. But it would have been nice if everyone had some wider variation, because apart from the suits and the bad guys you're fighting, it was pretty much taking on the same guys across time and space, if I'm honest. But you can't really kind of complain too much. I mean, it would have been annoying. Sorry, it would have been nicer if they had more separation, so different fighting styles. Like Ultimate Spider-Man in the symbiote suit, he's got a rage mode where there's tentacles coming out of his chest which you can attack with, which is nice. Spider-Man 2099 has a advanced vision thing, accelerated vision, that's what they call it, where time slows down, and that really doesn't play into the combat so much as a few falling elements. And I didn't realise until the boss fight that you were meant to be using your accelerated vision during the falling elements. I was just like, free falling. Oh, yep, I can do this. I've hit a few things. If I'd have used my accelerated vision, I probably could have cleared those easy, but I didn't. So, I took a few hits, but, not much we can do about that. So yeah, it would just been nice to have more separation in the Spider-Man. Finally, it's not a perfect game. There were a couple of bugs. Specifically, I had issues with a couple of the later levels when I had doors which were meant to open at the end of bad guy speeches. they weren't opening for me. And so I'd hit start, bring up the menu, restart. I'd load in the same room, and then the door wouldn't open again. Well, that's just a potato. That's just shitty. And the way that you have to get around that, and shout out to Mr. Alive Death who clued me into this one. You have to exit out of the game and hit continue, and it loads you just before that room, and then you can hopefully continue through. I just had that happen to me twice, otherwise it was kind of okay. There was a couple of instances in boss fights where I think I was fighting against Hobgoblin, and he was spawning like mini Hobgoblin bad guys to fight, and repeatedly he'd spawn one off far enough away that they weren't attacking me, and I wasn't realising they were there, so I'd just be standing around for 30 seconds being like, okay, what now? So, you know, there's just a couple of bugs and glitches and annoyances, but ultimately this was a fun game and I did enjoy it. I kind of get the feeling that it may have been a little bit rushed out after Arkham Asylum. No doubt it came out 2010 compared to Arkham Asylum's 2009, so no doubt they had been working on it prior to Arkham Asylum being released, but some of it felt like it may have been inspired. Certainly the Spider-Man Noir had the stealth elements, especially the final boss fight, which felt like it was heavily inspired by some of Arkham Asylum. But it may have been a little bit rushed out because of Arkham Asylum's popularity. And one thing I would have loved is if it had been open worldy more than specifically like the linear mission based that it came out as. You know, it would have been perfect if it just had a bit more open worldness to it. As it stands, it is like missions taken from a menu, and you know, that works, but it just, especially for going back to try and get things completed 100%, it just would have been so much nicer if we had like even just a small cross section of New York to go through, and you know, you can like hit a button and transfer between the dimensions. That would have been so perfect. The beauty in that would have been like, damn. Even if they had like the same bad guys like across all of the dimensions, and you know, you're having to get through like an area, but it's overly mobbed, so you need to stealth out, so you've got to switch to Spider-Man Noir, and then you've got the added element of darkness, and you can sneak better. Granted, that wouldn't have been so good for like Spider-Man 2099, who most of his missions take place up on skyscrapers, and you know, you got a lot of falling in that, so that, it wouldn't have been so good for that character. But to me, it just would have been like a huge boost to the game if it had something like that. But I just think that especially the swinging mechanic, the web slinging, would have been like really at home in an open world game. There was back on the PlayStation in about 2001, I think it was, Spider-Man game came out, and that had, you know, web slinging through New York, and it was still like linear missions, but it was a open city that you could sling through essentially, and that kind of felt open world. It definitely wasn't, but it kind of felt it, and this game just would have had so much bonus if it just came with the same thing. My only other grievance with it is you've got all of these kind of challenges to unlock, and they're viewed through a thing called the Web of Destiny, which is like a web-based grid where you can view things through, and as soon as you load it up, it's like imposes the web, then things start spawning on it, and it's like, okay, well, that's annoying, and the web just kind of made it not awkward but annoying to navigate. It just made everything feel like it was taking more time than it should have. I understand from a aesthetic point of view the Web of Destiny makes sense, but it would also have been nice if there was a quicker, like, linear menu that you could view just from, like, a pause menu as opposed to having to go into the web editor. That just would have been, again, a major boon to me. But all in all, even with those little grievances, even with a couple of bugs, the game was fun and entertaining, and had that comic booky feel, and it ended with Stan Lee going, "Excelsior!" So the nerd in me is quite happy. And that's pretty much it. I had a blast, I really enjoyed it. It is a game that I could come back to. I got, just kind of playing through, not trying to complete everything, I got, I think, like 72, 78%, I don't know which. So there's more to uncover, and it doesn't feel like I've got a, like, huge amount. It's not like GTA where all of the bonuses count for 90% of game content. So I could go back and complete everything, and I may very well do that at some point. But till then, you know, next Monday I'll be starting on Arkham Asylum, because we're doing a comic book theme on my Twitch channel every Monday, and after this we're moving on to Arkham Asylum. So if you want to tune in, I'll put a link in below this video, so go give me a follow and we shall see you there. I've been Silent, you've been the audience, this has been Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions. Keep an eye for it, it is on Steam, so have fun.
To all of you web-spinning wonders, I proudly say, Excelsior!